Hello.
Hello. Hello and welcome to our second episode. I don't know, I thought that would be funny.
That's funny.
Our second episode with Heart of Hope. Apologies everybody, I was very, very unwell last week. I like to say that when I get a chest infection, I sound like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Like, just so crazy. Yeah, my precious, like that. But no, it's all cleared up now, so I'm back to normal. I'm sounding human, and I'm so excited for us to get stuck in talking about this week's hot topic, which is myths, misconception, and resources. So Hannah's going to throw out some myths and misconceptions at me, and we're going to discuss how these go. I might throw a few out there as well, who knows. But I think it is important for us to talk about, because we're always learning more about neurodiversity in general, really. But specifically, we're going to focus on autism today. So welcome to our podcast, and let's get cracking.
I feel like we need a little tone here. Or something like that's Star Wars. I always do Star Wars. I don't know why.
Yeah, why not? What's the Superman one again?
So now when you edit this though, you should have a little Superman come across the screen.
Oh, that would be amazing. Right, I'm going to try.
Or you could Photoshop your face into it. So you could have like a Photoshopped you.
I think you overestimate my abilities, you know what I mean? I'm good with a bit of editing, but that's my favourite.
Right, so my little giggle at the beginning of the video was me laughing because we had to we couldn't communicate via Teams before starting the podcast.
No, we got there in the end. That's
so I feel like your abilities are better than mine. Like, my setup in this house is like absolutely crazy. Like, one day I'm going to take a photo and send it to you so you can see my setup, because it's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway. What am I doing?
What are you doing? So you are going to shout out some myths and misconceptions, and I'm going to try and obviously talk about what my knowledge and kind of, we're going to bust some myths basically.
Okay.
And I might throw a few stories out there. I won't keep us too long, but experience really tells us a lot. So we had a comment, didn't we, the other day about one of the, I would call this a misconception more than a myth, a misunderstanding that people have about children with autism. So do you want to read that one out for me, Beck?
Excuse I a minute. I've got to switch apps, so I may go silent for like a second. Excuse I.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so it goes like this. So this is from TikTok. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Keep going. I'm splitting two apps at one time. So from TikTok, we had somebody comment to say that the one that does their head in the most is when people say that children must be spoilt and they always get in their own way.
Yeah, I think that is a definite misconception that still happens today, actually. I mean, I do think there is a lot of knowledge around autism and how it's not about giving in to a person on the spectrum, but it's actually understanding that the world is a neurotypical world, and it's not suitable for the way their brains are wired, really. So if you think, they have these things called like kind of like a virtual experience where you get into like an autism sensory bus, and you sit in it. I've never experienced it actually, and I would really like to one day get a chance to see what it's like. But it's supposed to give you a real understanding of what it's like being on the spectrum and being overwhelmed by sensory overload.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a workshop I'm doing actually next week, a sensory workshop where we play a video, and you can find it on YouTube actually, called Sensory Overload. And it's like an animation but it really like highlights this young boy on the spectrum and just being overwhelmed by all the noises of traffic, of people chattering, even of somebody like tapping their pen on a notebook, you know, and it all gets so much that he has a meltdown. So personally for me, I always say, and I say this for a reason, autism is not an excuse. And mainly because there are some people who feel like they can say, oh well, they're autistic and therefore, you know what I mean, and I'm going to use this as an example because I think it matches up quite well with the comment that's been made on TikTok. Is that my daughter Elena, she's obviously autistic, and we really struggled with encouraging her to try things that suited her age. So we would take her to a place called Totally Ape, and they had like a kiddies play area with lots of like what you call it, like a ball pit, and it was all soft play. And then on the other side of it they had like a proper climbing frame and, you know, the swinging, what are they called, the swinging things, obstacle type stuff. So that was more suited for her age. But every time, without fail, she went into this baby area and ball pit, and we're like, well, you know what, she is happy, we're not going to push it, but we were hoping we could encourage her. And this one day she decides, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go for it. So she goes to climb up these steps on the thing, you know, the foam steps, to start going up it. And we were like, oh yes, and I was getting ready to film, I was so excited. And then this girl just grabs her by the scruff of her t-shirt at the back of her neck and yanks her off and just throws her back and like just runs up. And I was so upset. I was like, my goodness, because then of course she did not want to do it. Like that was a big milestone for her, and it just threw her, it really threw her confidence. So I complained to the staff and I was like, I am not happy, blah blah blah, where's the staff, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, they spoke to this girl's parent, and the first thing that the parent said was, well, she's autistic, is the first thing that the parent said. And I was like, well, so is my daughter, you know.
Exactly.
And I said, she still needs to learn it's important to apologise, you know, she still needs to learn that behaviour, treating other people like that is not right and it's not fair. She wouldn't like it if she was pulled off the thing.
100%.
So I do think there is a misconception where it's, you know, people just give in. I mean, like people say to me about diet for the kids, you know, and I have to say, I'm sorry, but sensory issues, I've just got to give them what they will eat. And so anyone could think, well, that's you just giving in. But actually, it's me making sure my kids are fed. You know what I mean? So,
100%. And the thing is, like, schools have become so... Funny enough, I had a conversation with Destiny, my oldest daughter. She'll be 11 now in October. And me and Destiny had a very similar conversation. So my kids, they can have like a snack for school. I'm like a feeder, so I give them, well, not just a snack. They have a packet of crisps, a piece of fruit. They have like the Dairy Dunker things. Other options are available in other stores. Anyway, they're like, and a biscuit. They have quite a lot. And the one day I like packed this snack, and Destiny was like, "Oh, we're not allowed that." I was like, "Sorry?" She was like, "We're not allowed that." I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "We've got to be healthy." And I was like, point. So this is me having a mum rant that, right? Point one, I'm not being funny. You know when they're having dinners in school, because in Wales now all children can have free school meals, blah, blah, blah. So point being one, they feed our children chips and pizza, okay? That is not healthy, is it?
No,
Thank you.
not.
Right?
Obviously,
yeah. And obviously, like point two being, obviously I know Elena, like like I know, like children like Elena with autism and additional needs, blah, blah, they have a fussy appetite. They will not eat certain food.
Yeah.
So for me, I get really frustrated then, because I know the struggle you go through and other parents go through with children with autism. I mean, I'm a little bit rebellious, shall we say. Lord forgive me. And I will give it to them anyway. And I'm like, at least you're being fed. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I find it very frustrating when they're like, oh, they have this thing of, you're not allowed squash. Why? Oh, it's got, because it's ridiculous, right? Because of the sugar, apparently. The sugar. Right? I'm not being funny. It's No added sugar, thank you very much. Like,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm up for trying to encourage new things, but it's doing what you can. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard as a parent because you get judged if you're not doing what everyone does, but you've got to do what's right for your child at the end of the day.
100%.
So I think that's totally right. It is a misconception, and I think it still holds true for some people who don't fully understand. Going off the back of that, a key one I get is, well, my child does that. I get that a lot, especially when I try to. It's like people ask you, how are things? And you try to talk about what it's like because they've asked, and you think they're asking because they actually are curious and they want to know. And then you start talking about some of the things your child does, and it is something that's unique for them. And they're like, well, my kid does that. And I'm like, that doesn't mean my kid's not autistic. Like, just because your kid does it. I'm thinking, well, maybe you should get your kid assessed then. But that can be difficult. That can be hard. Because there is an air of judgment when that's said, whether they realise it or not, saying, oh, well, my kid does that as well. And it's like, yeah, but you don't live it. Like, I can only give you a very brief idea, a very small description of what I go through, but actually when you're living it, it's a whole other thing. You
feel like, do you want to come and live with me for a month?
Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? Come and live with me. Come and see what it's like. So for those of you who are watching, you can probably see my phone. This is the way I'm talking. Hello. But you know what I mean? Like, you can probably feel like, do you want to come and live with me? Do you want to come and see what it's like on the other side?
Yeah.
Like,
it's not easy to describe at all.
Yeah.
It's just not possible, really.
Yeah.
But that's why I think it's good to have these kind of conversations, because hopefully it'll open people's eyes. I mean, most people are starting to learn now about the vastness of it, really. But I just think, why not share what we know? I'm throwing the misconceptions out there, or myths. One key one I had the other day was, you can grow out of it, can't you?
I'm 32 and I haven't grown out of anything yet. For those of you who know me.
yes, hashtag, we know. We totally know, Beck.
But isn't it ridiculous? Like, you can grow out of it. Like...
Well, yeah, because... then that just goes to show the limitations then of what they knew, because their family member, nephew, was diagnosed with autism quite young, say around 2, and they came across as quite, as we call, high functioning. My goodness, that could start another whole debate about whether you should say high functioning or not. But we're going to say it because I need to give you a bit of a clarity around it. Is, he presented as he was coping quite well with school, with certain things. And straight away she was like, oh yeah, he's growing out of it. And I was like, no, he's not. It's a lifelong condition. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So you can't grow out of it. It is the way the brain is wired. So I did a autism awareness coffee morning last year and invited her to it. So I did a bit of sharing about autism, and I went into my life and what it's like. And that was the first thing she said at this group thing was, you can grow. And I was like, no, you cannot. And I busted that myth right there and then. I said, because your nephew had support from 2 years old. Things were put in place, things were managed from an early age. Any challenges he might have faced, he had professionals involved from the get-go, really. So yes, he's managing really well now because he's had that support to carry him through. There's some kids that don't get diagnosed till they're 14 or 15, and they've had to struggle and really had difficult challenges because they haven't had that support. So I've said to it, it's the fact that he's had that support that he seems to come across that he's coping really well. But imagine if he didn't have that support.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I suppose with that support and implementing changes, they probably adjust better. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I would imagine with routine and lots of different things being put in place, that I would imagine that children would adjust better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'd say that even though, yes, with support, they do adjust better, the challenges don't stop, and that's not going to be negative, they just change.
Yeah.
So like, you know, for example, when the hormones come in, that's a whole new set of challenges right there. I mean, that's challenging for any young person who's going through that change. But for a child that's got high anxiety, and any form of change, it gets them on edge, and they worry and they ruminate over it. Something such as big a change as hormones and body changes, that's really going to affect them much even more so, to be honest. Elena's at the stage now where she's turning 13 soon. I know, I #feel very old.
I feel very old too.
Yes. And emotionally and mentally, she's probably more around 9 years old, but she's actually turning 13. So I've had to have these conversations about body changes and hormones, and oh my word, she just keeps saying, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to change, I don't want it to happen to me. You know, she's like, I just want to stay, I don't want anything to change. And obviously it's better to prepare her than not, but it's something that when it does happen, I know it's going to have a real effect on the house. It's going to have a real effect in her life. And all I can do is be there for her and prepare her and get her ready for it. But this is it. It's one of those where, yes, the support means that they maybe manage things and adjust better because they've got understanding parents, they've got professionals in place. But that doesn't mean to say it does that there's no more challenges, everything's perfect. It's not like that at all.
Sorry, my sound went off then. No, definitely, 100%. I'm totally with you. I tell you, another one is what I would consider, you know, when people are like, oh, they're just really naughty. Like, that's a biggie, isn't it? It's just like, oh, they're just really naughty and they're not disciplined and That's a massive one, isn't it? And you know what really annoys me? Like I said, like my kids are kind of, you know, they don't have any like additional needs or anything like that. But I hate it that my youngest, she's 3, and she can be a bit feral. We'll use the word feral. I think I googled it the other day, didn't I? And it meant
it does mean wild. Yes, we clarified that it does mean wild. It just sounds weird. But
and she can be a bit feral, and she can, do you remember that old, I think it's Tesco's advert? Obviously there are other superstores available, but I think it's a Tesco's advert, and or could it be Asda's? I'm not sure. But do you remember the advert where the kid is like screaming, having a tantrum in the middle of the shop, and then mum gets down? That's me. I am that mum. Like, I will do it. But you know what I really hate is that I remember once, like, being in the shop and Carrie was having like an absolute meltdown, and she was like this, and then people like interject and are like, "What's the matter? Why should we?" And I'm like, "Excuse you a minute." Yeah. Like, and I get frustrated, and my kids are just naughty, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? But like, that misconception would go for mine when they're in that mood. But your child genuinely has needs, and they just can't cope, and it's the sensory and the this and the that, and that must be so frustrating. Like, obviously as a parent, I'm very overprotective of my kids, and I'm like, hang on a minute now, you mess with them, you do with me, so. But as a parent with children with autism or whatever, that must be like heads will roll. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I remember when Elena was, I want to say 4 or 5, and I had a meeting with school, and this was when she was in mainstream schools and she hadn't had a diagnosis yet, and the teacher said she's just very defiant. Like, that was how she described Elena. She would talk about how Elena would go to the toilet, but they'd find her wandering the halls. So she wasn't like leaving the classroom to go to the toilet, she was just wandering the halls. But that to me says she was finding a way to cope and to get out of the classroom and to get through it. Like, do you mean? Because she was overwhelmed. But yeah, defiant. I hated that word. I just thought, my goodness, I can't believe you're describing my child like that. You know what I mean? But that is definitely one. I think some of the myths that we're moving away from now are about, how more boys have autism than girls. I think people are really starting to understand that it affects girls very differently from boys. And I've got one of each. I've got Elena, who's nearly 13, and I've got Lucas, who's nearly 5, and he's very different from Elena. Complete opposites. And it's been evident that he's on the spectrum since he was 2.5, and he's nearly 5 now. Still waiting for a diagnosis, but the fight goes on. Whereas with Elena, we didn't really start to see the signs, and let's face it, she was our first child, but we didn't really see it until she was 5. So I think it is more evident in boys, mainly because of the way they manage it, I suppose. Whereas I'm not sure what it is about girls, but it's like they mirror and model the social behaviours of their mothers, and so they're able to, like they say, mask those difficulties because they model what their mothers are doing, whereas maybe boys don't do that the same. That's just an observation. That's not a definite, but that's what I've noticed anyway. So I'm just thinking, is there any other things we could cover?
Just thinking.
Oh, the other one I thought of actually. A few people have said to me in the past that Elena does not look autistic.
Oh yes, I was thinking that. Not about Elena. Sorry, but I was thinking.
You're thinking of the same misconception. Yeah, there we go.
You know what I mean.
That's one that's been said to me quite a lot over the years. She doesn't look autistic. And I find it interesting that people think that autism has a look. I find that very interesting. I know there is some links to other genetic conditions alongside autism which do have a look, but you don't have to have those conditions to have autism. And what can I say? I don't know. I think there's this program called Love on the Spectrum, and there's a girl on there who's obviously autistic, and I don't know, I just never would have said autism has a look, but when she started talking and expressing herself, and she was in, like, I would say in her 20s, and she was talking about loving Disney princesses, and she was all about fantasy. When she started, her personality started coming through. That's when I was like, yeah, definitely on the spectrum. Do you mean? But I wouldn't have said that a look really gives you any indicator as to if somebody is autistic, unless of course they've got other genetic traits. Then you can see that there's something else going on. But yeah, I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's become a big thing now anyway, generically, hasn't it, about disabilities as well, isn't it? Like you see all sorts of videos on TikTok. A lot of them I feel are staged. But you see a lot of these videos on TikTok about people being like, you can't park here, and they've got a blue badge, and they're like, why? Well, you don't look disabled, that kind of thing. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these videos I'm like, that's so staged. But it's become a very much a known thing, hasn't it? You can have so many people can have disabled badges, be classed as disabled for many different reasons, But yeah, people, it's almost as if we've got that culture of I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. That's where it can be very difficult for developmental conditions, because it's not something you can just see.
No.
It comes through in behaviours. And I think the hardest thing is when people say things like, oh, we all have a bit of autism in us, and we all have a bit of ADHD in us. And it takes away from the challenges of the people who go through these things. Like, I'm not saying we can't all have our quirks, because we do. We all have our quirky things, and one of the things that people on the spectrum do is stimming, and you could be really class doing something like that, flicking a pencil is stimming. Right. But stimming is something that somebody on the spectrum has to do to regulate their body and their emotions. Yeah. So they could be starting to get overwhelmed and think, feel like they need to spin, and by spinning they're regulating themselves, and grounding themselves to feel better.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't need to do that to feel better. But we could be bored and think, oh, I'm going to flick my pencil because I'm a bit bored. Do you know what I mean? Doing it for the sake of it rather than needing to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's the key difference with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, when you think of it like that, for us people who have got very big personalities, me being one of them, we all know it. I'm off my absolute nut. I'm a loon. I know a lot of people are like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with her. I know that that's what it is, and they would probably, and I mean, we laugh, I can take it. I haven't got time to build a fence to get offended. Do you know what I mean?
That's hilarious, yeah.
But, sorry, I can't claim that quote for myself. Somebody else said it. But, you know, but when you really think about it, it's kind of like, can we just let people be themselves instead of limiting them and putting them in a box? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, so what? Like, even if somebody has got autism or whatever it is, let them be who they kind of are. Because actually, you know, it's a very difficult and hard thing to go through and to manage. Of course it is. But actually, that person is still beautiful inside, outside. But unfortunately, society is like kind of like put people, sorry if my son goes off. Like put people in a box. So you go in the autism box, you go in the ADHD box, you go in, you're just an absolute nut box, you know. But instead of putting people in these boxes, why can't we just all be people? You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, and I think that's where the debate comes about whether you get a diagnosis or not and labels or not. I personally think it's empowering for the person who gets the diagnosis, because then they know what they need to do or what support they need to be able to function in a world that's not made for them. But yeah, I totally agree. And I think that like links in with another misconception, is that you have to have ADHD to have autism, or you have to have autism to have ADHD. I mean, I've got ADHD, I'm definitely not autistic. Sorry. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. But you know, there are some people who have a bit of both. But I just think it takes away from the different difficulties. Like, personally for me with ADHD, I just can't stick to a routine. I really, really struggle with routine. Whereas people on the spectrum, they love a routine. They need to know, I'm doing this at this time, I'm doing this at that time, blah, blah, blah. Whereas with me, I get bored of it. And like, I try to stick to routine because I know it's good for me, but I can't do it. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, just like, I think there's so many different things. Like, for example, I can't shut my mind off. You know what I mean? I can't stop. Whereas there's people on the spectrum who I suppose they can get lost in thought, in one specific fixation. Whereas my mind is going bing, 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 bom, 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 bing, 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 bom, bom, bom. So I find it very difficult to finish tasks. So I have to really push myself to refocus. Whereas I think people on the spectrum can be quite gifted with their focus, especially if it's in their interest. So yeah, there's so many differences, but I just think there's a lot of professionals out there who, you know, there was a lot of kids that were getting misdiagnosed with ADHD instead of autism. And I feel like they're saying, oh, well, you have to have both now because, you know, that covers our mistake, essentially.
It's just crazy, isn't it? It's just absolutely crazy. Sorry, I've had a bit of a cold. But, like, you know, when you're saying about the ADHD autism thing, you've kind of blown that up there. Because like you said, people with autism love a routine. I love a cheeky bit of routine. I do. I love it. It makes my life function. But you've said right there, can't deal with it. Absolutely not. Like, it just doesn't work for me. Blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? So how can that be in the same box if we're putting things in boxes? You know what I mean?
I mean, I know there are some people who have a bit of both, but their difficulties like intertwine, like they kind of collide.
Yeah.
Whereas like, and that's the thing, what's annoying for me is I know that the best thing for my brain is routine. I should function on routine. And they say that that is what helps ADHD.
Yeah.
But it's like my brain just goes, no. Just no.
Yeah.
One of the key things people on the ADHD do is we buy lots of planners and we write, like I have things written everywhere because my memory is so bad. Whereas, like, another example now, Elena, she had a bad experience with a friend years ago. She still to this day remembers it. Do you know what I mean? Her memory is sharp. Whereas mine, like, I need to write this here, and even then I might still forget it. You know what I mean? So yeah, disorganization is my life at the moment. I'm trying my best to function, but routine. I just have to be kind to myself and realise it's not always going to go perfect.
Exactly. And I think that's a massive message to a lot of parents. I would say just mums, but obviously there's a lot of dads in this situation as well, where it's kind of like, be kind to yourself. I remember the best advice I was ever given when I had kids was, I think it was like a college tutor or something when I was in college. And they were like, as a parent, when the kids are going absolutely mad, and you were like, I'm going to die. Like, you know, and you just like, help. You know, she was like, make sure the kids are safe and go and lock yourself in the bathroom just for 5 minutes, just so you can have that moment to find yourself and think, I am amazing. I am, you know, I'm above and not beneath it, you know, that kind of thing. Just put yourself in that mind frame to be like, okay.
Absolutely. And that's what we all need to do, is to take that time, because at the end of the day, we're all human. You mean we've got children to look after, but we need to look after ourselves as well.
Yes.
So I think we've covered quite a few myths and misconceptions there. I think we've done all right.
We did indeed.
So resources wise, I mean, Love on the Spectrum that I mentioned earlier, I would say that's more of quite an interesting watch if you're interested in seeing how it impacts, you know, young adults that are trying to find love. Because again, it's the social interactions that can be quite challenging. I like to watch because I just think it's sweet, just seeing these young adults looking for love. It's lovely. What I would say for support really is, there's an amazing book called The Reason I Jump, and I think it's, what's the name of the person, Naiko, hang on, I'm gonna have to try and read it. The Reason I Jump by Naiko Higashida, I hope I've said that right. And also there's a documentary that's been done based off of the book. It's absolutely fantastic, and that really looks into autistic people that are non-verbal, and how they communicate and see the world. And I think it's a great watch, it really is, or a great read, because one of the key misconceptions that Nike, I'm not sure how I'm saying it, but you understand. He says about how he was non-verbal when he was a child, and people just assumed that he didn't want anyone to interact with him and he was left in the corner, you know, and all he wanted was to make friends. He just didn't know what to do, how to do it. So that's a real misconception, is that those that are on the spectrum that don't speak, that they're not interested in making those connections. Of course they are. You know, we're all human, we all need connection, but they just didn't know how to go about it. So that is a really good read. And also Chris Packham's Inside Our Autistic Minds is a documentary, it's a BBC documentary, and that follows a few different people on the spectrum, and it empowers them to share their story and how autism affects them on a daily basis. And it's absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend watching the episodes. You can watch them online, but it gives you a real insight. There's a young lad on there who again is non-speaking, and he is so intelligent. Really, I think he's another level of intelligence, really. And he wrote something that he wanted somebody else to speak. So he picked the voice he wanted for his video, and then this person read out what he said, and it was just talking about how people assumed that he was still into the Teletubbies and things, but actually he wanted to read about mythical dragons and different things. It's absolutely incredible. So I think that's a few resources to get us kicked off, to really get a bit more of an understanding about autism. So yeah, I hope this episode's been helpful for people. I've had fun talking about different experiences.
Definitely. I tell you a random one, which you're not prepared for.
Okay.
What would you say is the best buy or the best sort of resourceful toy or something for the children with autism? What would be the best thing you would recommend? Think, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Everybody needs something.
That's not fair. There's too many. There's too many. What I would say is, for any child that's really sensory, and I mean, as an example now, and I'm just saying this in case it resonates with you, my son Lucas used to pull his eyes inside out. Oh, horrible. He would like squeeze his eyelids together and pull them inside out. Ugh.
A few people that can do that.
Yeah.
It's like a thing.
So what we were told was, it's because he needed that instant sensory input. So if you touch your face, you get instant sensory feedback. What happens is the signal goes straight from your hand to your face to your brain. Whereas if you went to pick up a cup or open a door, your hand touches that object, it goes to your brain stem and then your brain. So by doing this directly to your face, it goes straight into your brain, the sensory feedback. So we were recommended a jiggle ball. So it's one of these, a jiggle ball. Jiggle. Okay. So it's like a ball with lots of soft cone spikes on the end.
Oh yeah.
Coned and soft, okay. And you turn the button on, it goes like this.
I know the one.
Yes. So for any parents who find that that's something that they need, it's a really good buy, really good, because that stopped him doing that. And another good one I would say is, you can't go wrong with a sensory light. You know, the water ones, the tube ones. Yeah. They are really, really expensive. But if you know your child loves that kind of visual sensory stimulation, it is worth getting.
What about a lava lamp? Would that do the same or no?
It would, yeah. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to go for the most expensive thing. I mean, we have sensory night lights from Amazon, and they like light up the ceiling as if it's a galaxy, and stars go around. And both the kids absolutely love that. And I'd say it's probably around the £30-40 mark at most. I think it's £25 something, but guaranteed you'll go and look and it'll be like 30 odd. But you know, it is a good buy, definitely worthwhile, because it helps calm them to sleep.
Yeah.
I can't believe how long we've been talking for.
Soz, not soz.
Hashtag not sorry. Sorry.
What's the song? Sorry, not sorry.
Not sorry. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just makes me think of the X Factor, where these people go on and they're like, I can sing like Beyonce, I can sing like Christina Aguilera.
Oh, do you know what? Funny enough, Destiny was on TikTok watching. So Destiny has access to my TikTok, which I monitor, blah, 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 just for those parents, you know, who need to know that. Anyway, she was looking at TikTok and something about X Factor came on and she swiped it and I was like, oh, no, X Factor. And she was like, what's that?
Oh, I have to say though, that one of the funniest ones was, right, I keep seeing it on TikTok and I don't know whether it's because I find it hilarious.
I know what you're going to say.
Do you know? It's like, amazing.
That's not what I was thinking. I thought you were going to say the one with the man and he's like, come on, Barbie, let's go party. Yeah.
You must be seeing a different one. The one I keep seeing is the guy going, amazing race. And it's like really like this. And they're like, what is he doing? But that's the one I keep seeing.
Oh, I seen the one the other day. Remember the two young girls? I mean, I don't know how old they would be now. But you remember when she socked the girl in the face? She punched her. And I was like, no, it was so interesting.
Talk about proper attitude. Do you know what I mean?
It was, yeah. And I'll never.
Louis, she fancies you, Louis. Well, you're old, but she fancies you, and you're like, oh my word, where did these girls?
Oh yeah, and when because they had that girl who was a judge on there, and to be fair, I didn't know who she was, and the girl was like, "Sorry, but who are you?"
Oh god, I know.
Oh, I used to love a bit of cheeky X Factor. Oh, it was funny, innit? But yes, made me feel very old though when Destiny was like, "What's that?" I was like, actually, it was like the show.
I don't know what it was. Oh my word! Now I do feel old.
Well, then I tried to explain to her about Pop Idol. Remember Pop Idol?
Oh my word, Pop Idol!
I used to love Pop Idol. Remember that? Gareth Gates and Will Young. Remember the battle? That's amazing. I remember young Anton Deck. I mean, Anton Deck will always be, they will always be in my heart. But, I mean, they're not old now, really, are they? Oh, did you see that Ant's having a baby?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's mega nice, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. We're totally going off track now, Beck.
Hey, I mean, this is what's about. Oh, did you see I used my mug?
I did.
Did you?
Oh, hashtag, okay, this is the best way to end this, I think. Hashtag, next podcast, I'm gonna go down south, y'all. So I'm gonna be down south. The next one, we're gonna be sat next to each other. It's gonna be like it's gonna be really unusual. It's like,
I mean, this could go really badly because it could just end up like a giggle fest.
Probably.
Which would be fine.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I'm gonna be down there. We're gonna be sat next to each other, and we're gonna talk. I just went, oh. So yeah, I'll post on the talk of the tickers. I'll post on TikTok about our next set of hot topics. But no, it's gonna be fabulous, and I'm looking forward to it. And have some quality time.
Yes.
It'll be fun.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so great. Hang on. I just knocked out my mic lead.
You are?
I knocked the mic lead out. Oh, now I'm knocking Right, come on now, be nice to me. Oh my word. Right, so I think this is the perfect place to end it, I think.
I thought you said this is the cucumber.
No, say before I fall off the chair, let's finish it. All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you our hot topics for next week. We will hopefully get the video up on YouTube by Saturday. Hashtag Saturday. Bye.